Hey everyone, and welcome back. I bet a lot of you are thinking about AI and how it's changing the world, which is exactly what we're looking at today. But with a bit of a twist, we're going beyond Silicon Valley and diving into how the European Union is approaching this whole AI thing. And for this deep dive, we've got a really fascinating academic paper to guide us. It's called, get this, Embedding Artificial Intelligence in Society. Looking beyond the EU AI Master Plan using the culture cycle.
Catchy title, right.
Well, it's definitely thorough, but that's the EU for you, I guess.
Yeah. No, but seriously, the paper really digs deep into the EU's vision for AI.
And that vision, it turns out, is quite different from what we're seeing in, say, the US or China.
It's a very distinct approach, that's for sure.
So what's the big difference? What are they doing over there across the pond?
Well, in a nutshell, the EU is really pushing for what they call trustworthy AI.
Trustworthy AI. Okay, that sounds, well, trustworthy, I guess, but what does it actually mean in practice?
It's about putting human rights and privacy front and center. It's about making sure that AI development doesn't come at the cost of individual freedoms.
So it's not just about building the coolest, most advanced AI out there. It's about building AI that, I don't know, plays by a different set of rules.
Exactly. And those rules are rooted in ethical considerations. The EU has actually laid out 4 main ethical principles or imperatives for AI.
Oh, okay, I'm curious. Lay it on me.
Okay, so there's respect for human autonomy, the prevention of harm, fairness, and explicability.
Explicability, that's a new one.
Basically, it means that AI systems need to be transparent, that we should be able to understand how they work and how they reach their decisions.
Makes sense. So these are the 4 pillars of trustworthy AI.
You got it. But what's interesting is that even within this framework, there are some, well, tensions.
Like what? You mean not everyone agrees on how to apply these principles?
Yeah, for example, the paper points out that harm prevention seems to be the dominant concern.
That's interesting.
Almost like it's overshadowing the other principles at times.
Oh, I see. So even in this very, well, European approach to AI, there are these underlying debates and power dynamics playing out.
Yeah, and that's where the paper gets really insightful. It uses this framework called the culture cycle to analyze how these high-level ideas about AI will actually translate into real-world actions and consequences.
Okay, culture cycle. Now you've got my attention. Break it down for me.
It's actually pretty straightforward. Think of it as a cycle with 4 main stages.
Right, okay, 4 stages. Got it.
You start with an idea, like this vision of trustworthy AI. Then that idea gets translated into actual rules and regulations, shaping how AI is developed and used.
Right, so it goes from abstract principles to concrete laws and policies.
Exactly. Then you have the actual interactions between people and AI systems in everyday life.
Ah, so how this trustworthy AI actually plays out in the real world.
Yep. And finally, all of this impacts individuals and society as a whole.
So it's this whole ecosystem, right? It's not just about the technology itself. It's about how that technology is embedded in our culture, our laws, and our daily lives.
Bingo. And what the paper highlights is a potential disconnect between the EU's principles and the actual methods for designing and evaluating AI systems.
Oh, interesting. So you're saying there's this gap between the ideals of trustworthy AI and the practical realities of implementing it.
You hit the nail on the head.
Like they have the blueprint for a fancy ethical AI house, but haven't quite figured out the plumbing yet.
Precisely. And that's not all. Another crucial point the paper raises is that, well, there's not much clarity on how AI will actually impact individuals and society in the long run.
Right, so it's all well and good to say we want ethical AI, but what does that actually look like in 10, 20 years? How will it change our lives? How will it change us?
Exactly. And it's not just about the EU figuring this out on their own. They have to consider all the different players involved, the state, civil society, international corporations, and how their interests and perspectives on AI might clash.
Yeah, it's a complex web, isn't it? You got governments wanting to regulate, companies wanting to innovate, and individuals just trying to make sense of it all.
Right. And then you have those who are really excited about AI, those who are downright terrified, and everyone in between.
And those tensions are playing out in the real world right now, with things like the whole Cambridge Analytica scandal a few years back.
Yeah, that was a big wake-up call for a lot of people. It showed how AI can be used to manipulate people and exploit their data.
And then there are the ongoing debates about facial recognition technology and, the whole privacy issue.
It's like AI is this incredibly powerful tool that can be used for good or for, well, not so good.
And the EU is walking this tightrope, trying to balance the potential benefits of AI Increased productivity, better services, with the potential risks, the symbolic threats it poses.
Striking that balance is key, and it's not going to be easy.
So we've got this vision of trustworthy AI, but the paper seems to be saying, hold on, let's make sure we have the tools and methods in place to actually make this happen.
Yeah, and that's where things get really interesting because what happens if all these different perspectives on AI, all these different approaches, lead to a fragmented market within the EU? What if we end up with an AI crisis?
An AI crisis. Now you've got me really worried. What do you mean by that?
Well, think about it. What if each EU country implements AI regulations in vastly different ways? Could we end up with a situation like the Euro crisis, where those differences create instability and economic disparities?
That's a scary thought. Like some countries racing ahead with AI while others fall behind. And what would that mean for the EU as a whole? Would it fracture? Would it create new winners and losers?
Those are the big questions, and I don't think anyone has the answers yet.
So if this potential crisis is brewing, what's the solution? Where do we go from here?
Well, the paper suggests a really interesting approach. It's about moving away from simply trying to prevent harm and instead focusing on creating a more symbiotic relationship between humans and AI.
Symbiotic. You mean like humans and AI working together in harmony?
Yeah, kind of like a partnership. We need to design AI that can safely and effectively collaborate with humans, acknowledging each other's strengths and limitations.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we actually make that happen? How do we design AI that can truly collaborate with us?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
It requires a pretty fundamental shift in thinking. We need to move beyond this idea of AI as a tool and start thinking of it as a partner.
So it's not just about giving AI commands and expecting it to obey.
No, it's about creating a more fluid, interactive relationship. Imagine a robot trying to navigate a complex environment. It needs human input to make the right decisions, and the human needs the robot's information to make informed decisions.
Ah, I see. So it's this constant back and forth, a two-way street.
You got it. It's less about trustworthiness and more about the overall quality of interaction between humans and AI.
And how do we even begin to measure that? What does a good interaction look like?
Well, the paper actually breaks down some key elements for assessing that quality. It's not just about whether the AI is technically sound, it's also about how effectively humans and AI can work together, what they call co-action.
And of course, we can't forget about the human experience.
Right. It's not just about building AI that performs well. It's about building AI that feels intuitive, supportive, even enjoyable to use.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from the EU's vision of trustworthy AI to the challenges of a potential AI crisis, to this idea of human-AI symbiosis.
It's a fascinating journey, and we're just getting started.
But before we dive into the next stage of this journey, I want to touch on something that's been bugging me. We've been talking a lot about trustworthy AI, but is that really the end goal? Or is it just a stepping stone to something bigger, something more profound?
I see where you're going with this.
Is it just a way to get people comfortable with AI before we tackle the really tough questions, the questions about responsibility, agency, the very nature of what it means to be human in a world increasingly shaped by intelligent machines?
Those are the questions that keep me up at night, to be honest. And I think they're the questions we need to be asking ourselves as we move forward.
All right, folks, buckle up.
Yeah.
Because in the next part of this deep dive, we're going to explore this idea of responsible agency in AI. We're going to ask, who's really in control when AI systems start doing things we didn't expect, or maybe even things that cause harm? It's going to get real, so stay tuned. Okay, so where were we? Oh yeah, responsible agency? Still trying to wrap my head around that one.
It's a tricky concept, no doubt.
It's like we create these AI systems, right? To learn, to adapt, to solve problems. But what happens when they start learning things we didn't intend? Maybe even things that could be harmful. Who's responsible then? Is it the AI? Is it the developers?
That's the heart of the issue, isn't it? And the idea of responsible agency is that it's not about placing blame. It's about recognizing that responsibility is, well, shared.
Shared. How so?
It's about understanding that both humans and AI play a role in how these systems behave and the consequences that follow.
So it's like a two-way street. Humans are responsible for designing and training AI systems responsibly. And AI needs to be designed to interact in a way that minimizes harm.
Right. It's a partnership, not a master-slave relationship.
A partnership where both sides have responsibilities.
Exactly. And that idea of partnership is crucial for building trust. The more we design AI systems to collaborate with humans, the more likely we are to see them as, well, trustworthy partners rather than just tools.
Which brings us back to that EU vision of trustworthy AI.
Yeah.
Seems like responsible agency is key to making that vision a reality.
Absolutely. The EU's emphasis on human rights and ethical considerations aligns perfectly with this idea.
It's about building AI that respects human autonomy, that's fair, transparent, and accountable for its actions.
And that requires us to think carefully about those future cycles of AI development.
Future cycles.
Yeah, remember we talked about how those high-level ideas about AI get translated into actual interactions between humans and AI systems?
Right, right. So as we move toward this more collaborative vision of AI, what are some of the key questions we need to be asking?
Well, we need to anticipate potential friction points in those interactions. Can we design AI that is understandable to everyone? How do we ensure inclusivity? And how do we make sure AI systems can truly sense, think, and act effectively during those exchanges with humans?
We also need to figure out how to measure the success of those interactions. How do we assess the limitations of AI?
Yeah, how do we measure trust, both from a technical standpoint and from the human experience?
And how do we define the value of that exchange in terms of, co-action and inclusiveness?
These are all crucial questions, and they require us to move beyond this narrow focus on trustworthiness and consider the overall quality of the human-AI interaction.
It's not just about building AI we can trust. It's about building AI we can effectively and enjoyably work with.
Precisely. And that shift requires us to consider the entire human experience with AI. It's not just about performance and efficiency. It's about understanding how people perceive AI, how they learn to use it, and how they adapt their behavior to maximize the benefits of this collaboration.
It's about creating AI that feels intuitive,
Yeah.
supportive, even enjoyable to use.
The paper makes a really provocative point about this whole trustworthy AI idea. It asks whether trustworthiness is really the ultimate goal or just a convenient way to market AI and shift responsibility away from developers.
Oh, that's interesting. Is it just a way to make people feel comfortable with AI without actually addressing the deeper, more complex issues of responsibility and agency?
Yeah, it's a valid question. While promoting safe and ethical AI development is crucial, we can't simply rely on trustworthiness as a catch-all solution. We need to tackle the technical and design challenges head-on and develop robust, transparent systems that are accountable for their actions.
So the EU's vision is a good starting point, but the paper seems to be pushing us to go further, to look beyond the branding and focus on practical solutions that bridge the gap between principles and reality.
It's about moving from ideals to concrete methods for designing, implementing, and assessing AI. We need to figure out how to truly integrate these systems into society in a beneficial and sustainable way.
And that means embracing this idea of the culture cycle. It means constant feedback loops, open dialogue between developers and policymakers and the public, a willingness to adapt and evolve as our understanding of AI grows.
It's about creating a culture of collaboration and responsibility that allows us to, harness the true potential of AI.
And as we move into this new era of human-AI co-action, the EU's focus on human-centric values could play a key role in shaping a future where AI serves humanity in a positive and meaningful way. This deep dive has been amazing. We've gone from the big picture of the EU's AI vision to the very nuanced details of responsible agency and the future of human-AI interaction.
We've covered a lot of ground, for sure.
And it's clear that we've only just scratched the surface.
This conversation is far from over.
But as we wrap up this exploration of AI in the EU, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. Imagine a future where humans and AI collaborate seamlessly. A future where technology enhances our lives without compromising our values.
It's a future worth striving for, a future where AI isn't just about efficiency and productivity, but about enhancing our creativity, our understanding, and our connection to the world around us.
Okay, before we get too philosophical, let's bring it back down to earth for a minute.
Thinking about this whole conversation about the EU's approach, one thing that keeps coming back to me is the need for a global research agenda on AI.
A global research agenda.
Yeah, it's not just a European issue, it's a global challenge that requires a global response.
You're right. We're talking about the future of how humans interact with technology, something that's going to affect everyone, everywhere.
And it's crucial that we agree on methods, frameworks, standards for designing and assessing AI. Imagine if we could systematically compare the quality of human-AI interactions across different systems and cultures.
Like a universal language for talking about AI.
Exactly. And a global research agenda could be the catalyst for that shared understanding. It could help accelerate the development of responsible, ethical, and truly valuable AI that benefits all of humanity.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into AI in the EU, I want to leave you with this final thought.
What's that?
It's about staying curious, asking tough questions, and exploring this fascinating world of AI with open minds. Because the future of AI is ultimately up to all of us. As we wrap up this deep dive into AI and the EU's approach, I'm left with this feeling that, wow, we've uncovered so much.
We really have. It's been a journey, hasn't it?
It has. From trustworthy AI to responsible agency to the potential for an AI crisis. But if there's one thing I hope our listeners take away from all this, it's that. Well, what would you say is the most important takeaway?
That's a good question. I think it's the realization that the future of AI isn't set in stone. It's not this predetermined thing that's just going to happen to us. It's something we're actively shaping right now through the choices we make, the questions we ask.
So it's not about passively accepting whatever AI technologies come along.
No, not at all. It's about engaging with this stuff, with AI development, with the ethical questions in a way that, well, aligns with our values.
And that's where the EU's focus on human-centric AI really stands out.
It does. It's a reminder that at the end of the day, technology should serve humanity, not the other way around.
But it's not just a European issue, is it? This is a global conversation we need to be having.
100%. We need to be thinking about how to create a future where AI benefits everyone, regardless of where they live, who they are.
So what can our listeners do? How can they be a part of this conversation, the shaping of the future?
It starts with staying informed, staying curious. Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions, Challenge assumptions, demand transparency from those developing AI.
Hold policymakers accountable too, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's about being an active participant in this whole AI thing, not just a passive consumer.
It's about taking ownership of the future.
Well said. The future of AI is in our hands, all of us.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into the world of AI and the EU's unique approach. It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
Likewise. Always a fascinating conversation.
To our listeners, thanks for joining us on this journey, and keep exploring this incredible world of AI. Until next time.